Welcome back, Cutoffs and Coffee. CT and James with you as always. We have our cutoffs. We have our coffee. A lot has happened since we've recorded last, but we're excited to be here and have an awesome guest on the show today. This came from a conversation that we had our guest and I had in January, and we said the next time we come back with Cutoffs and Coffee, you will be the guest. And so we manifested that, and now 8-9 months later, we are here for the interview, and we're really excited. We're really excited to do this. So real quick intro on our guest today. She is the host of the Soccer Queens podcast, also one of the hosts of the Girls to Queens podcast. She's a speed and strength coach, former college soccer player, and the creator of a few programs, the Total Youth Soccer Fitness 365 program, as well as the Total Youth Female Athlete Fitness program. Today on Cutoffs and Coffee, we have Erica Suter. Erica, finally, welcome to the show.
Yeah, we made it happen. I made the mistake of not wearing my cutoff, but maybe next time. I'm just really happy to be here, and I resonate a lot with your training philosophies, and I'm really excited for the conversation today.
Yeah, thanks so much for saying that. And it is not, you don't have to have it, but it's recommended. And then maybe like a couple of hangs, couple of pull-ups. We'll pull out the cutoff next time. So to get started, even before we get into a little in-depth about yourself, I want to ask a question. You can find a lot about you on social media with a quick Google search. What's one thing that you'd like us to know, that you'd like the listeners to know, something about you that we can't find through a quick Google search or through a search on your social media?
That's a really good question. I'm just going to keep it simple, but I'm part Dutch and my family lives in the Netherlands. Not many people know that.
How about that? I've never thought about going out there. Have you been out there recently?
I was there, I think like 3 or 4 years ago for my brother's 30th birthday. So yeah, we went to Amsterdam, and that was quite the sister-brother bonding trip.
Yeah, I would imagine. Well, that's cool. Yeah, that's good to know. Now kind of let us know how you got to where you're at. I know you've got an awesome story. I've heard you talk about it on your podcast a couple times, but for our listeners, let us know how you got to the place that you're at today.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it all started just in my childhood. Like, I started playing soccer when I was 6, but I actually played rec until I was age 13. So nowadays that would be considered crazy in the youth world, especially with all these travel and elite teams popping up and the pressure to go elite, at such a young age. But I think playing in that rec system from ages 6 to 13, really helped me to develop a passion and love the game for what it was, because I didn't have a lot of pressure placed on me to perform or make the top team. I just loved playing soccer. And because of that, I wanted to keep getting better. I wanted to keep learning the game. And a lot of it was self-taught, at least up until I entered the travel system at age 13. And when I got to that point, it was just so easy for me to get into that higher level, because I had taught myself all the skills on my own. I had played so many other sports. I have a brother, obviously, so I grew up playing in the neighborhood with a bunch of boys. We wrestled, we played football, we played capture the flag. We were just doing so many activities. So by age 13, I was just this insane athlete. And nowadays, no one does that,
Right.
But it's something that we have seen in the research and in the greats that we know, Michael Jordan, Mia Hamm, all these people who were sampling at a young age. We've seen it work time and time again. And I'm just grateful I had that childhood. And I had started strength and conditioning and more formal training when I was in middle school, because I wanted to keep getting better. And it was me who asked my mom, hey, is there a speed or strength camp I can do? I just want to make sure I can really optimize my potential here. And I was the one who took initiative, because I just loved moving and training. So my mom signed me up for a strength and conditioning camp, and it was a camp in the off season. We were training 5 days a week. And now I just laugh when people can't even do 1 day a week, you know? So I'm just glad I had that experience as well. So I guess like being in strength and conditioning now, it really started then when I learned in middle school how good it was for my performance and my overall health. And it just stayed with me all through high school, all through college. And then when I got out of college, I went to coach kids in Brazil, started to get my strength and conditioning certifications, went back to graduate school to get my master's in exercise science. And I just had this fascination of learning more about the body, and just loved how capable the body was with smart training and movement and stimulating it over and over again. So now I've been coaching for a decade in performance, and it's been a blast. And it's nice to just give back to the kids what I saw benefit me so much for all those years.
That's awesome. So you had 10 years experience in the field. And, you know, kind of during that time, you've probably seen a lot of different athletes working probably with multiple sports outside of soccer. At any point, you know, during maybe your early years when you were starting to be a strength and conditioning coach, did you have a moment where you like kind of took a step back and kind of had a paradigm shift? Or was there any like red pill moment, either maybe your playing career or during your time as a strength and conditioning coach?
Yeah. So I actually, in 2012, when I got into coaching, I started off in the sport specific, skill-based world. I was doing like some performance training, but I didn't dive into it enough. And it was like mainly that skill focus. And what I saw over and over again was tons of injuries happening. So soft tissue, so injuries that, you know, 10-year-old girls shouldn't be having. I just saw the ACL numbers increase just in the research, and the statistics just getting out of hand. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, these kids have like so many resources. They have like fancy facilities and technical training nights. Like, shouldn't they be getting healthier? But I found that they weren't prepared as athletes. So they weren't strong enough. They weren't addressing any like compensations or imbalances. And that's because they were only being exposed to the same movements over and over again, and just overusing certain muscle groups and not giving other muscle groups love, or not being put into different environments that were outside of primary sport. And now we're even finding that there's a huge role that the brain is playing in injuries, and kids just not being aware of their bodies in space and just slow to react. And you can't really train that if you're constantly doing the same sport and thing over and over again. So that was my red pill moment. I was just seeing the injury numbers increase, the non-contact ACL numbers increase, and it just, you know, made me want to dig deeper and really solve this problem. So I would say in 2013 was when I made like the full shift to physical training.
I imagine that's where the kind of beginning of the Total Youth Soccer Fitness program came from. Was it more focused about the injury prevention? Was it more focused on the development as the individual, as the athlete? Talk us through that program a little bit. And for gyms and for coaches who work with youth athletes, you know, what are they doing wrong? What are some things that they can do to kind of help hopefully, you know, not prevent these issues, but hopefully reduce some of these injuries?
I created that program because I wanted to really simplify physical training. And one of the biggest problems I see why it's not being executed at the club level is because coaches just don't feel confident in executing it. Well, they don't feel competent in the material, but then like when they have to explain it to a group of 13-year-old girls, they get nervous. And I really wanted to write the book to really break it down for them and be like, okay, just start with a good warm up. incorporate balance and proprioception, or teach them how to side shuffle properly, do some bear crawling, build the core endurance, and just giving them easy solutions that they can execute on the field. Because a lot of them also don't have access to a facility or all this equipment, and they just need to start with the basics. So that was the inspiration behind that program.
And you're able to now share that information with more people than just individuals who you work with.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
The way you took it. Yeah, that's so cool. We went through, I mean, a ton of your awesome social media stuff, and it hits with both James and I and another couple of the coaches at the gym. And we talked about just going back to the basics again, something you and I've talked about before. You say, daily movements, walking, pulling, hanging, crawling, balancing, walking. Why aren't people doing these things? And do we need to scream this louder? I mean, do we need to keep reposting and retweeting this kind of stuff for you, from you? What is it that we need to do to get people to understand how important these daily movements are?
I think it's just part of the instant gratification culture we're seeing. And a lot of people want to go from point A to point B as fast as they can, not realizing that it is like an entire pathway of youth physical development. And I've had so many kids over the years come to me that, we do the most basic evaluation, balancing on one foot, or crawling for max time, or holding a lunge, or hanging is a big one. And they can't even get that down, but then they ask me for like resisted speed training and all this like cool stuff you see. And it's like, wait a minute, like, do you want your kid to be safe and stay in the game longer? We really can't rush this if we're not addressing like the root of this issue. If they don't have balance or stability in the trunk, like we can't really have them do it under load or speed unless we're reinforcing these motor patterns year round. And I've had some people on board with mastering the basics. They totally like get the message. And I think we just have to keep like being transparent about it. I don't think enough performance coaches are with their expectations, and parents are being lied to. There's some people, they'll go to a performance facility and they jump right in to a program, and there's no like ecosystem laid out, and the parents think like they're just going to get a faster child in a month's time, which is, it's really, really hard to do. So just being really transparent with the parents. And in my training contracts, I have like a whole diagram laid out. Like, okay, we're going to spend 10 weeks doing this. We're going to spend another 10 weeks doing this. And then the advanced loaded stuff, that's like 10 plus weeks. That's like ongoing. Like that's stuff like at the high school and college level that, we can really have some fun here. But like, if you're middle school, early high school, like we are just mastering the basic motor skills.
Right. Gosh, that's a great way to approach it. Is that the conversation with the parent as well? Because we're in it every day, and you answer these questions every single day. I just said the other day, I have a 10-year-old who needs to get faster at stealing bases, but I can't even, me personally, I couldn't even get him, to hold himself in a high plank push-up, right? I try to tell him, well, hey, we got to make sure, we got to check these boxes first. What's that conversation look like to get that buy-in? Is it, hey, it's going to take 20 weeks, pay me up front 20 weeks and commit to it? What's that kind of conversation look like?
Well, I always compare it to the math analogy. So, I say, well, your child didn't start with calculus or differential equations. They started with addition, subtraction, algebra, and that took several years to work up to that level. And physical training is no different. And I also relate it to what the parent does and, in their career, like they have to prove themselves, to get promotions, or to have annual reviews. Like, you don't get an annual review after a month's time. Like, you get it after the year so that you've had time to prove yourself and really grow your skills in the company. So I don't know why people think physical training's different, like, so
Yeah.
I just give them these analogies, and some parents are like, whoa, that makes a lot of sense. Like, we're all in, but you're still going to get some people who just, they're not on board. Like, they roll their eyes at the basics. They don't want to put in the work, and that's fine. And, I'm in my 10th year, and I even had that last week. I still have it.
Right.
I had a girl who couldn't even skip properly, and who was losing balance and just like swaying everywhere when she was on one leg, and the dad wanted like a full on like speed program, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, like, we got to get coordination down, and then rhythm, and then we do the speed drills and the fancier stuff. And he didn't get that. He was like, no, we wanted a speed program. And I said, sir, the health of your girl is my top priority. So if you want the instant gratification, I'm not your coach. And I said, best of luck.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a different conversation with parents. Sometimes we get to have those conversations with parents when the kids aren't around. And then when we are working with the kids, when the parents do trust us and sign their kids up, that's a whole nother dynamic, with the athlete themselves, because I've done a decent amount of skill work from a baseball side or a football side. And it is that instant gratification. If you can give a cue that's going to help them throw a little bit better of a spiral, 2 throws, 3 throws later, they're like, oh, this is helping me. I'm working towards being a better quarterback. But 2 sets into, front foot elevated split squats or whatever the ISO hold is that's uncomfortable, that, we're trying to push it to 60 seconds and the kid's not holding on and he's not even focusing. And these are some of those early sessions. That's another area of buy-in that we as strength coaches need to get from the athlete. What are some conversations that you've had with athletes that you remember that maybe flipped a switch on with some of the athletes you worked with?
A lot of the athletes just, they want to feel like they're making some progress. So if you get a new kid who's never done this before, they are probably going to see progress a little bit sooner, just because the adaptation's a lot greater. So just like showing them small wins along the way, and just really asking them also from a qualitative perspective, like how they're feeling. And they always say, oh, well, I feel great after a workout. Like, I feel like I'm really like strengthening my body. And just like having those conversations with them helps a lot to keep them engaged. And I always try to remind them, like, your technical and tactical skills from your sport, they're going to be done. Like, once you're done playing football or baseball or soccer, you don't really need those technical skills on like how to throw or, how to like run into space, but you'll need to still be physically strong even as you age. So, like the stuff we're all doing this is like timeless,
Yeah. And you've got to have now, being in it for 10 years, you're now to the point where you've had athletes who you started with when they were young, and they've had some success through high school. They've had some success through college. What have those relationships been like to you? The people who you've been able to work with, if since the beginning, what do those look like? What are those relationships been?
It's been really hard moving to Florida, to be honest, because when I was in Maryland, like a lot of those girls I started with when they were like 10, 11, 12 years old. And then when I moved, like they were all like going off to college. So yeah, it's hard being here for that reason, because I really miss that group. That was the first group where I saw just like the most committed athletes, and they just trusted the shenanigans I was doing. But I think like with them, like early in my career, I like saw myself not as their coach really, but more of as a friend, and just really developed the relationship first. And that just made them want to stick with me through everything, and just really buy into the movements and drills I was doing in the sessions. And when I left Maryland, I got like just a ton of letters from everyone, and I read all of them, and a common theme that I saw was they all said that they always had fun at the sessions, and it was like the best part of their day. So I was like, holy crap. Like, I didn't even realize, like, I knew it was like they were having fun, but like, you don't know like the impact you're making until you stop for a second and reflect, and your players open up to you a little bit. So that was like cool for me to see. And I want kids to enjoy this stuff. I genuinely do. And in order for them to enjoy it, they have to stick with it and just see how powerful it really is.
It's so interesting working in a field that somebody can just Google something, go on the internet, and then feel like they've got all the answers and don't need a coach, right? It's so interesting to see coaches who are able to maintain relationships with athletes for a long time. I just spoke at James's wedding a couple weeks ago and mentioned that, and I reached out to some of his athletes and asked them, what is it about this dude? Why did you guys keep coming back? And it sounds like there were similar answers for you. It was because of this, this, and this. And it's because they seem to enjoy the training as hard as it is, right? And as tough as it needs to be. They seem to enjoy what they do. I've gotten a ton of great ideas from you when we do our speed work, just pretty much reaction agility focused. I get a flag out, I get a different sport ball out, to try to get athletes to react and respond, and move, over different planes than they would during their sport. What are some of the things that you've done that have really stuck with you throughout your process that you've seen are helpful and beneficial for athletes, when it comes to warm-ups, when it comes to speed drills, when it comes to things like that? What are some of those drills and games that you've come up with that athletes seem to enjoy enough to keep coming back?
With speed, that's something that a lot of people get wrong, and they either aren't doing max effort or they're not having fun. And I think speed needs to be both, especially for youth. And I just always look back to my childhood and like why I enjoyed movement and why I had fun. And I look back to all those like games we did in the 90s, like capture the flag, manhunt, like hide and seek in the dark. Like we've done that. We've done like nighttime sessions, like no lights, like just running around chasing. And those were like the times when, I've never seen more effort come from these kids. So yeah, it always has to be fun. It has to be intense. They're competing against each other. They're competing against time. And recently I've gotten into more of the timing systems with speed. And even with my younger kids, like my middle schoolers, I use it because they like the technology and they get excited that it's like so accurate. And man, I've never seen some of these kids run faster when they're going through the free lap. So that's been like an interesting find, but I think that competitiveness is always needed and it's always a blast.
Yeah. And what is that? Go a little more in detail about the timing system. Is it just one of those, is it laser times, or what are those that you're working with?
Yeah. So it's free lap is one of the best timing systems out there, I'd say. And they wear a chip on their short, their waistline, and you get 2 cones with the set, and they run through the first cone all the way to the finish cone, and it gets the exact time. And for all these years I had been using hand time, and it's good. Like it'll do if you can't invest in a timing system, but the timing system has been really great to get some like real numbers and to show to the parents, hey, here's the improvement, here's where they were even just 3 months ago. And that also helps with like the parent buy-in, because parents really like to see the data. And it's, you know, it took me a while to get on board with this, but it's just how our industry is evolving. It's becoming like more like tech driven. I don't think you need to overdo it with tech. I only find the need for timing system and jump mats, and that's really it. But it's definitely elicited a lot of effort in my players, and I really enjoy it.
So one thing we talk about at T3 in terms of like, you know, these performance numbers we see, right? So when your athletes are running through gates, they're getting feedback from that, you know, time that they've spent training, and now they get to kind of see a result. You know, we talk a decent amount. That outcome of whatever that 10-yard split isn't necessarily the intention of our training. It's an outcome. It's an unintentional outcome, whereas the meat and potatoes of our training is to be a better athlete on the field. You know, what are some of the ways that you turn speed training, you know, that is eliciting a high performance outcome in those 10-yard splits, but then make it more dynamic to incorporate some of those game aspects, you know, specifically of soccer?
That's a great question. And it's definitely a blend of everything. So there'll be some sessions where we'll just do the timing system and it's all linear running. And then there's other sessions where we won't have the timing system and we'll do like a sprint, like a curve sprint or a turn and sprint or a lateral shuffle, react and sprint, and just giving them more game specific scenarios. So they're just not stuck only in that linear plane. I'm still trying to figure out how to bring the timing system into those reactive drills. I did try it with the curve sprints and that actually worked really well, especially as they were like coming out of the curve and then hitting the straightaway. That's the time we got. So that definitely got more max effort from them. But I think like the more variety you can have on top of just regular speed training, the better.
It's an interesting point with the, like, being able to time a curved 60 in baseball would be way more beneficial for coaches to understand what those numbers look like than actually running a 60 dash in baseball, which is something I don't think I've ever done playing the sport my whole life. But right. I might have to look into that and use that with our upcoming off-season baseball players. That's fascinating.
Paul Caldbeck, he is really in like the curve sprinting like field. Like he does a lot of research there. I think he's written like a few articles for Simply Faster. Like he has some really good stuff on curve running.
So,
cool.
You know, as you're kind of incorporating your training going, you know, into that speed and in a little bit more detail, what does the rest of maybe like a 60-minute session kind of look like for some of your athletes? And is that like, what is the typical training time for that? Is it 60 minutes? Is it more? Is it less?
Yeah, usually in the off season, it's like 75 to 90 minutes. And then in season, like 45 to 60. So I can give just like one example. So a speed session in the off season is very simple. Like we don't do much, but it's like the rest times that get you. Like that takes up a lot of time. So we'll just do a regular dynamic warm up, and then we'll extend the warm up and start with jumps. So it could be just doing bunny hops, so like low intensity jumps, or working up to vertical jumps or broad jumps, 3-time broad jumps. So it just varies depending on the phase we're in and the progression. And then after jumps, we'll get into more of the mechanics of speed. So just really reinforcing upright posture, knee drive, and like hip mobility, and then just how to set the arms. And we'll do different like marching variations, skips, A skips, B skips. We'll do, I call them rockets. I don't know if track world calls it that, but I just came up with a name. But it's when they're marching, but the leg is straight. So they're like really activating the hamstrings. So that's all just kind of like an extension of the warm up. And that takes like 30, 45 minutes, I'd say. And then we'll get into the actual max velocity work with the timing system. And I'm having every athlete rest for 2 minutes or more. And if we're doing like 6 sprints that day, 6 like 40-yard sprints, then that's going to take a pretty long time. And then we just wrap it up after that.
So it definitely it sounds like your athletes are like good and warm by the time they're like ready to do anything on a metric. I think that's, hearing that, it's, you're seeing all of this, but having the same conversations with the parents who want the very like specific, this is what I want my kid to do. But you can't even make it to the point where speed matters in your workout. What are some things that you wrap up with at the end? You say you kind of just like wrap things up. Is that like ISOs, mobility? What are some areas of focus that you kind of send the girls out with or guys out with that you're working with?
I usually don't incorporate strength on the same day as speed. So we'll cool down with either diaphragmatic breathing or just going for a walk. Like, I think that's
Awesome.
one of the best things you can do after a max velocity day. So it's really simple. And, I just find it really funny that, like, when you look at like my speed session, we're doing like 3 things, and it like seeing parents view of speed is really funny because they think it's like, okay, we're going to do like a bunch of like tap dancing through like ladders and agility rings, and then we're going to like tie them to the bungee cord. And it's like, wait a minute, like your child will get faster if they're reaching over 30 yards distance at max effort and resting appropriately. Like, that is like the smallest fix anyone can do to get their kid faster. Do that for a year, you're set. It's crazy. Like, it's really that simple.
And if you're playing not a lot of sports, there's very rare opportunities that you ever open up into 30 yards of open field with a max effort sprint, or ever have enough time to be able to rest, recover, and repeat that same max effort again, unless you're intently training or unless you're maybe playing capture the flag and running away from one of your friends.
Yeah. And that's another great point. Like, I don't think parents understand, like, the game that's played on a Saturday is not speed training. They might be hitting over 30 yards like once in that game. Maybe not even, depending on your opponent, but they need to expose their nervous system and especially their hamstring muscles to that sprint a couple times a week. Otherwise, they're not getting appropriate speed training.
We like to refer to the hamstrings as ham cables.
Ham cables, ham.
That's good. I like that.
As one of our athletes said that, actually.
Yeah.
I was like,
ham ropes.
Ham ropes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So what are some of your favorite ham rope activities that maybe on a strength day? You already mentioned the rockets as a part of your speed training.
Yeah, well, definitely like sprinting first for the hamstrings, and then I really like single leg deadlifts are a big one. Glute bridge walkouts. I like Nordics. I think there's a time and place for them. Like, in the off season, it's great, but I don't think any Nordic will accomplish what a sprint does. I think sprinting is the ultimate hamstring training. Like, I think the soccer community is like really obsessed with Nordics because of the eccentric component, but I would choose sprinting or even like a slow single leg deadlift weighted over that,
Is that because of like any specific reason, the setup of those exercises, the time under tension of those exercises, the ability to load? Like, what's the differential for you to like the single leg RDL a little bit more?
Well, for the population I'm working with, the female athletes, the single leg deadlift has just like such a bang for buck. So if I'm crunched for time, like, I would rather expose them to a stimulus that's working on proprioception, control of the trunk, being able to activate the glutes while the hamstrings are also activated. So it's just like a really bang for your buck movement. And I do have limited time with some of these girls, so I have to be mindful of what I'm programming.
I do want to transition a little bit. We keep talking about the demographic of female athletes. And anybody who's followed you for a certain amount of time has gotten so much information from you about training females. what would your advice be for coaches who work with female athletes that don't, inherently understand what it is to be a woman, right? For us, for example, we work with a ton of girls and women every single day, but, what's some advice that you would have for us or other, men's strength coaches listening about working with women?
Just keep learning. Just like really master the art of youth female athlete performance and understanding what they're going through physically from a growth and maturation standpoint. So understanding that, you need to make strength training a priority so that they're building healthy bones while they're growing, they're building stronger muscles to be more resilient to injury, and also understanding like what they're going through emotionally, especially like in the adolescent years, and like just dealing with like hormonal things. And like, you don't need to like talk to them about it, obviously, like that would be awkward, but just understand it. And like, you can have conversations just recommending that they recover better, or they nourish their bodies better to like offset like hormonal oscillations. Like, you don't have to make it like this like awkward thing. Like, just be knowledgeable of the human body in general and what it needs to thrive, especially a young, growing human body that needs a lot of care and attention to just strength and detail and fitness programming.
Talk about that recovery a little bit. That's been a huge thing of mine recently, almost too much to where James gets annoyed because I'm focused so much on recovery. But what are some of the things? Yeah, we talk about, technology as I'm tracking my strain right now as we record this.
Wait, you have the watch, the Polar Watch?
Oh, no. I just have the Whoop, and then I have the Apple Watch, but it's charged right now. Which one do you have? Because I did want to know about, do you track any of that kind of stuff?
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I have.
Yeah, James, you can turn off your video and audio here, and we'll just talk recovery.
I have the Polar, and I track my daily activity and my sleep. So.
And has that helped?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make me feel good when it says I slept horribly.
Right.
So is it safe to say knowing that gives you more anxiety than not knowing that?
And I do see that end of it too, because so last night I was like having trouble falling asleep, and I was anxious because my watch was on, and I was anxious that my watch would be like, you slept horribly. So I took the watch off, and then I was able to fall asleep. So I see, I see it. I see that side of it too, James. But I like my watch, so yeah.
I'm not going to tell you not to wear it.
Right.
No, I get it. I see both ends.
Yeah, we've been going back and forth about it for a while. We've talked to other coaches about it, and other people, use certain metrics on recovery. So kind of transitioning to the recovery side, is there anything you use with your athletes? Obviously, everybody's not going to have a smartwatch. Everybody's not going to have a Whoop band. Everybody's not going to have numbers. Is there something that you use that your athletes are able to communicate to you how kind of prepared for training they are? What does that look like on your end?
So I use the technology of feeling. So with youth athletes, like I just feel like they don't need more tech, and
right.
We can make the argument, well, it's good to have data and see like change over time and all that stuff. But for like middle school girls, like I want them to like get in tune with how they're feeling and understand what their body needs without something telling them what it needs. Like there's like a fine line, and I think tech has like taken us away from being human and like connecting with ourselves and what we need to feel better. So I just tell the girls like, hey, like, how do you feel today? Like energy, motivation, are you excited about training today? And just have them rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. And then if they rank low, then we just talk about some tips on how to improve sleep or how to eat better. And it just has to be an ongoing conversation. Otherwise they're not going to get it. Like there's like coaches
Right.
that will touch on nutrition like once before a big tournament and then they're done. And it's like, no, like these kids need to be reminded like every single week on how to nourish and how to sleep better and how to manage stress and take time off from tech. So to answer your original question, I'm really big on recovery, and I'm finding it like more and more important to talk about because of the myths surrounding it. A lot of kids are instructed, okay, just take a painkiller. Okay, just take a Motrin. Throw on a bag of ice, static stretch. All of these are just like catastrophic. Like, and it's what we've been doing for years and suggesting for years. So I'm just trying to give them things that are going to help their muscles recover better and their minds to recover better. And it's really all about the nervous system. Like if you can keep the nervous system calm, then you're good. Like you're not going to perceive muscle soreness as much. You're going to be more motivated or more creative. And like slapping on a bag of ice isn't helping the nervous system, you know?
Right. Well, you know, and we work with such good people, you know, at the facility we're at out here in Avon, Ohio, that we rarely see those things anymore, which is nice. But we do end up in the college setting. We end up in the high school setting where we do hear that from coaches. And it just seems so obvious to us that this is wrong. But, you know, some people in some places, probably more often than not, do need to understand that there are some things we need to do to help, you know, get parasympathetic. What are some of the low-hanging fruit things there? You know, we talk about sleep, nutrition, and hydration. What are some of the easiest things that you suggest to your athletes, you give to athletes as you've seen have been beneficial for their recovery?
If you can get their breathing correct, then you get like everything else correct. So the breathing slowly through the nose gets them in that parasympathetic state, and then the muscles will relax more. Muscle soreness is not physiological, it's neurological. So just making sure that they're breathing properly, and then if they're breathing properly, they're gonna sleep better. It's going to be much easier to get into deep sleep, REM sleep. And then when you sleep better, then you're able to eat better and not like go for like the sugars and processed food. So it's like, start with breathing first, and like everything else will fall into place. Like you'll be set, and breathing properly is free. It's easy to do. You can get a lot of reps in because you take like 18,000 plus breaths a day or something. So just nail that down first and just be like really mindful of it as you go throughout your day.
Yeah, but that's not going to sell, right? That's why people don't want to hear that. You say, just breathe, right? Yeah. Wim Hof says, breathe, MFer, right? But people don't want to do it because it's not sexy and it doesn't sell. How about for sleep? How about what are some of the things that you suggest to your athletes for better sleep?
There's so many things. I mean, it's critical to be exposed to sunlight, and then like towards the end of the day to just dim the lights in your home or in your room, and like get into that mode where you're winding down, and to make sure like you're going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time, and that you're more likely to get your body into a consistent rhythm. So starting with those, and then getting off tech, or at least having like blue light blocking glasses before bed, so the blue light isn't making you super sympathetic dominant like right before you sleep. As last resorts, I hear a lot of teenagers taking melatonin, which I think is so bad for you. Like melatonin, it's good if you want to fall asleep fast, but it doesn't necessarily get you into the sleep you need for recovery, like the deep, slow wave sleep. There's a lot of research out on this. So I recommend don't do the melatonin. If you need to take something to sleep better, magnesium is really good for that because it's a muscle relaxer. So I actually take magnesium myself, only because I don't get it in my diet enough. And I only recommend people like start with food first with magnesium. If you're not getting that, you can supplement, but do your research on that one. With supplements, you need to like consult with someone.
Yeah, you're a big magnesium guy, James, right? That's one thing I haven't really messed with a ton.
It's great.
Yeah. I recently started using mushroom extract from Life Cycle. It was now I'm forgetting the name of it, but that's helped a ton with my sleep. But you've seen the magnesium benefits, right, James?
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a distinct like difference in how I wake up. Not necessarily how I fall asleep, but there is a distinct difference when I wake up. If I have taken the magnesium supplement the night before, I wake up a lot clearer. There's a lot less grogginess to that wake up process. And I would say that like when it boils down and people ask me advice on it, I say, well, I'm probably the wrong person to ask, but these are what I take and this is it. And it's just three things. And it's caffeine, creatine, and the magnesium sleep aid. But keeping it simple, like I definitely know if I'm out. And the weird thing too is like the dreams that I get are crazy and very vivid. Versus like me not dreaming at all.
Yeah. And that means you're in the REM sleep. And I think during that time, that's when your brain is like quote unquote, like cleansing itself, and it helps for like better, like information processing and like learning the next day. If people aren't dreaming, that is concerning. Like you should be dreaming and remembering them. And I think I heard somewhere that your dreams need to be on color, they have to be vivid. So I can agree. Like taking magnesium has definitely helped with the dreaming and the waking up thing as well. Like I just don't feel like I've been hit by a bus.
Yeah.
Right. Are there things you do morning routine wise that help you set up yourself for a great day of coaching, of teaching, of training?
I get outside. I'll make my coffee and then I'll just go for a loop around my neighborhood barefoot. Awesome. And just the barefoot walking, getting that sunlight the first 30 minutes in the day, an hour if I have time. And just keeping it simple. Like I think a lot of the answers are in the simple things and like the natural things.
Do you walk on the grass then?
Yeah.
You know what concrete does? Blocks our connectivity to the earth.
That's interesting.
Blocks it, yeah.
It does,
yeah.
It does.
That's interesting. Okay, I'm going to
think about like electromagnetic fields, and now we're getting to areas that I really don't know much about. But the electromagnetic field of the earth, that's why people go outside and earthing. And it's a great way to help with jet lag too, is just get connected with the ground. But concrete is enough of a barrier to block that electromagnetic field from kind of balancing our own electromagnetism.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And how about meditation? Still a pretty good meditator? Pretty consistent meditator?
I try. I mean, some days it's like 5 minutes and that's fine. I don't want people to think you have to like sit down for like a 90-minute session. It's okay to just do as much as you can, but it helps to try and work it up when you do have the time. It's super beneficial. And coming back to sleep, like there's research that meditation is more effective than sleep medications. That's huge.
Yeah, well, because it's right back there with the breath, right? Like you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You don't want to be on medications. Like if you can do like the natural way first, the better, because there's so many other side effects to any drug that you take. So just keep it simple with something natural first. Like try that first for a while and see if that works.
I appreciate it because it seems to be the one time during the day that I'm not trying to do a lot. Right. And I think that's important to have, is just some time where you're just breathing and think and either being intentional about not doing something or just understanding that this is some time to relax. And I think that is so important in in that recovery process, or just to have that, especially if you're going into a day where, you know, you're training in a ton of athletes and then we're on our phones and then we're, you know, drinking caffeine and then we're watching television and then we're training to loud music. I think that's awesome to be able to work that in. Again, even if it's 5 minutes, my routine's usually anywhere between like 4 and 6. And that seems to be just enough for me to be able to feel some benefits from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
so I like working that in.
Beneficial.
Yeah. Couple other things too, Erica, we have here, you know, answered, we got some questions from the internet. Some of our coaches had some questions for you around, and we've kind of worked all that into the conversation. Do you have, how do I want to say this? Do you have something coming up that you're excited about? Do you have some things that you're working towards? You know, I think we do all the time, but what are some of those things, if you don't mind sharing with us, that you're really into right now and excited about?
Well, definitely the Girls to Queens podcast. You know, I feel really called to do this. And I think like a lot of girls, like athletes and non-athletes, can benefit from the things that we're talking about. We obviously talk about keeping your physical health in check and your mental health, but we also talk about other pieces of life that girls aren't learning in the school system, like how to set boundaries or how to like find good relationships and friendships, what to look for, just how to like really uplift yourself and just like not go through life being a victim. I think it's like really ingrained in society, especially with young girls and young women, like that they're not like privileged, or they don't have anything, or they don't have as much to offer as men. And it's like, no, like women have like so many amazing opportunities, like more than they ever had in history, and no one's grateful for it. And we want to just spread this message to girls, like be like happy with who you are, and like own your strengths and like work toward your dreams. And we just want to expose them to a message that they're not hammered with, because we know what they're hammered with all the time. Mm-hmm. Like the toxicity on TikTok, the terrible dating advice, the manipulation that they're exposed to, these influencers showing their butts and being naked on OnlyFans, like all this crazy stuff. And like Jenna and I are really passionate about it because, like, you know, if we have daughters one day, like this is stuff we'd want to teach them. So I just feel so called to do Girls to Queens. And honestly, I don't know where it's going to go. We just started it, but like we did a bunch of research before we launched the podcast, and there's no one talking about this stuff for this audience of girls. So, you know, I don't have a TikTok, but I hear conversations with my athletes and I hear what's going on TikTok, and I don't like the sound of it.
Right.
You know, it's just.
Yeah, that's so powerful. You have a post here on your social media right now, which will, you know, won't be on by the time this airs, but it's, you know, advice you've never heard before. It will be uncomfortable for many girls to hear. And I think that's awesome that you're going out and saying that, like, hey, we're talking about stuff that you're not used to hearing, that you are going to be uncomfortable hearing, but it is so important that they hear it.
Yeah. I mean, it has triggered a few people, but there have been many people who have reached out to us, like dads, teenage girls, moms, and they're just like, oh my gosh, like you guys need to keep going with this. Like this is messaging everyone needs to hear. So we're really excited for it. We don't know what's going to come of it. Our next episode that we're recording tomorrow is going to be extremely controversial, but we have the data and the statistics to back it up. And we want to make sure that we're like presenting these topics with that. We are sharing a lot of our personal experiences and what we've seen with coaching girls, but we also want to give statistics because no one's researching them. You know, like they're just looking at TikTok, or they're getting outraged by certain things they're seeing from like celebrities. And it's like, no, you guys need to like really research this stuff, what's going on, before you like take a stance on it.
That's awesome. We will send everybody that way. With these couple podcasts, there's one question about it. What have you learned about yourself doing it? I know when we first talked, months ago, you had said you're just kind of seeing what happens and you're just going with it. Now, it seems to be something you're really into and you're super passionate about. What have you learned about yourself just having these conversations? That
I was doing it all wrong in my 20s because of societal conditioning.
Yeah.
And Jenna and I have had these discussions, and we look back on what we were doing and how we were acting in college, and it's like, why were we even doing that? That's not like who we are. We were just like going with what everyone else was saying. And, being like women who are like, so defensive and like always like on the defense and like in their alpha. And it's like, no, like that's not like how we're supposed to act like naturally. So now Jen and I are like, dang, like we finally feel like ourselves again. Like we feel very relaxed and empowered. We don't feel like victims. And that's what we've learned. We're just like, whoa, like we were doing it all wrong.
And I think a lot of us would say that.
And
right?
I think the amount of
women are. A lot of women are.
The amount of like looking in too is important. That comes along with some of those conversations with yourself, and like having like that strong self of like, this is who I am, and I feel like I'm back to who I am. I'm excited to hear your podcast that you're going to be putting out tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, if it we did an episode called We Love Masculinity. So we're a big fan of supporting men. And that's another message we want to get across to girls, that, not all men are bad. They're here to help, like encourage them as well. Like all of us need to work on ourselves. It's not just about, the women's team. Like we all need to do this together. So we're just trying to uplift both genders. And tomorrow's episode is about women in the workplace, and it's not what you think. Like it's Jenna and I have had really good experiences, and we've actually gotten more opportunities because we are women and we recognize it and we're grateful for it. We're not victims. We see like why women are good, and we do get more opportunities in some areas than men. So it'll be fun to dive into that one. But again, we'll be coming with a lot of statistics.
I like what you said there. It's not, to me, it's not a win-lose situation. And it's not even a win-win situation. It's just, we're in this game together, and it's an infinite game. That kind of reflects of, Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game, and talks about those type of situations. We're not competing against each other. It's not what it is. It's an infinite game, and this is, for the long term.
Mm-hmm. And I even find it in soccer, like a lot of women in the soccer field, they complain that they're around men and, men are bad and this and that. But that's the fact that they're giving off that energy diminishes their opportunities. And the women who do really well are the ones who they don't have a chip on their shoulder. They just let their passion shine through. They're warm, they're welcoming. It's not like them versus men. It's like, hey, like we're a team. Like I accept your strengths, you accept mine. Like this isn't about who's superior or inferior. It's just like everyone has something unique to offer. And I found the women who are the most successful in male-dominated industries are just very genuine and passionate, and they're grateful, and they just keep working at mastering their craft. And that's the message we want to send to young girls. Like be a victor and not a victim, because complaining is never going to get you anywhere in life. Like you gotta take self-responsibility at some point, and you can't be outsourcing your failures to others.
Yeah, it's powerful. With a lot of this kind of stuff, it seems like you're not ready to hear it until you're ready to hear it, and a conversation like that sounds like it will have some staying power. If you told me in my 20s that I was doing it wrong, I would have told you, no way, I got to figure it out. Right. But now I am in a position where I would be able to hear that. So it's great to be having those conversations. It's great to hear that that's what you all are passionate about and focused on. And hopefully, some of the younger athletes and kind of the, the demographic you're talking to are ready to hear these tough conversations. So again, we'll put all that stuff out and we'll send people your way, and we're excited about that. Let's wrap up with this. We've talked about a ton of awesome stuff, right? And I imagine people have their own answers to this question after just listening, to this conversation the last 60 minutes. But if you could narrow it down to something that you think we're missing in the strength and conditioning field that would benefit everybody, what do you think that would be?
I've thought about this a lot, and I think it's returning back to simplicity and just teaching your athletes whatever level they're at, that they don't need like all this like fancy technology to thrive or to be healthy. Like they can keep it as simple as breathing properly, moving every day, make sure they're nourishing their bodies and just feeling good about themselves, and just doing that year round, 24/7, 365, just like constantly like taking care of yourself. And like it's free. Like a lot of it's free. Like you can go for a walk in the forest for free. You can breathe for free. Like you don't need to outsource that all the time. Like you don't need to outsource your health. And I think coaches need, like, it's good we exist. Like we need to help athletes become stronger and show them how to progress over time and show them new exercises and whatnot. I think that's all great, but we also need to show them that they are in control too, so that when they don't have you anymore, like they can execute these very simple, natural things on their own to live a very healthy and hopefully fulfilling life.
Our goal is not to coach you all for the rest of your life, by the way, right? Athletes, we want to coach you for as long as you need us, and then we want you to be able to do it on your own. And that's so important for people to hear.
Yeah, it's like we're not trying to create lifetime customers. I see that's more of like the pharmaceutical industry's job, which is another problem. Right. Yeah, I mean, like even like just having an athlete for a year, you can teach them a good bit, like how to do a lot of this stuff, or just seeing them through high school, and then it's like, hey, like you're good to go. Like you probably could write a better program than I can. Who knows? So yeah, they're not meant to stay with us forever.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. They shouldn't be dependent on us all the time.
Yeah, I think, we understand the position we're at. Training is the easy part. Anybody can do that, right? Like you said, you're with us for a couple months. I just had a conversation with one of the football teams I've been working with since the spring, and I just pointed to one of our linemen. I said, you could write the program. That's not the important thing. It's everything else. It's what else is going on, the other 20, 23 hours of the day. Thank you so much for taking your time. Where can everybody find you?
I am on Instagram and Twitter at Fit Soccer Queen.
Perfect. And that's where we'll send them. Well, Erica, thank you so much for being on. James, glad to be back.
Good to be back. Thank you so much. Great first episode of the second season.
Yeah. Had a great conversation. Hopefully everybody took a lot from this. I think they will listen to it again, take some notes, and then listen to it again. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Focus on breathing. If you do it once, do it right after you listen to this. Thanks for listening. Cutoffs of Coffee.
Practice. Usually close to something like practice. What do you always talk about? At the end of the podcast, you always talk about something like practice gratitude. You have a little.
Yeah. Oh, it's been so long, right? Yeah. You got to say, practice some gratitude and
see you next week.
See you next week. How about that? Put me on the spot, right? I wasn't used to that. Erica, thank you. James, thank you. Everybody listen, thank you so much. Have a great day.